Welcome, everybody, to our Revisiting SSI session today for Asia, Pacific, EU, and Africa. As always, want to thank the sponsors, in particular Stream 44 Studio, who is supporting this strategic inquiry to shape the next decade of digital identity. And of course, my monthly GitHub patrons. It is, through contributions like these that, allow me to continue to do this type of work. So thank you very much. Today's agenda will do some more introductions and a little bit of context storytelling, talk about working circles. Not quite sure that we have enough people for a breakout, but we'll do the breakouts in the main session and then talk about next steps. But the big goal here is to find a lens that calls out to you and find someone to join you. So we'll talk about that as we go along. So quick introductions, your name and affiliation, and just sort of, one sentence of what brings you to this work. As an example, I'm Christopher Allen of Blockchain Commons. I wrote the original 10 principles in 2016. I'm here because I believe we've lost our way and this community can help us find it again. Andre, you just did this about 12 hours ago. You want to repeat?
Sure. So my name is Andre Freire. I came to SSI through a research that I was conducting for OWASP, focused on the cornucopia IAM suites. The goal is to offer a new companion deck as part of their 25th anniversary commemoration. What I've been exploring is how SSI can be aligned with cornucopia, or at least how I could apply the methodology to help the players understand and work with SSI. That's pretty much it. I got inspired because I didn't know much about it. I came across it in November last year. Lots of new knowledge. Got really interested in being able to work with peers that know a lot and have a lot of experience in identity space. That's the interest. The lens, if it's the compliance one, as you mentioned before, I would be interested in collaborating there and taking the work a bit further.
Okay. So Denkin, why don't you jump in with an intro, and then I have some other questions if you just want to help with those as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Denkin Chen. I work with the Taiwanese government, Ministry of Digital Affairs, to launch our own national identity wallet. And we face lots of challenges along the way during the building process. So I resonate a lot about those lenses. And I personally would like to start it from the business entry point of view. It's like how to form the fuel of the whole SSI systems. It can be a broader discussion, but I think it eventually will converge into some discussion like is a legal system of the government needs to be established first, or is there a possibility for business opportunity? Those kind of things I would like to explore. Thank you.
Thank you. Shigea? I think you're on mute. There you go.
Hi. My apologies to not showing my faces. My camera is broken at this moment. So I'm Shigeya Suzuki, Keio University researcher and professor at the Keio University Graduate School. And I'm teaching at this moment 25 students in my group. And some of them is really enthusiastic about digital identity. So I come to this digital identity area because one of the reasons is I was involved in some of the data security project. The other reason is that when we were start working on the blockchain technology about 10 years ago, and what we wanted to do was not use it as a digital currency, but for the application use, especially in some context of the data security. And I found that we need a digital identity to make that happen because we need to know about the identity for signing the data objects. So about 5 years ago, I finally found that this area of activities at the WCC, and I started involved with the DID working group at there, and I helped some of the discussion in the later stage of the DID working group discussion. And then later, I'm continuing on the verifiable credential working group. So I first hear self-sovereign identity about 5-6 years ago, I think. And at the same time, I learned about the principles. And I'm one of the core discontent of the trusted web discussions happened in Japan last 5-6 years. And I think that some of the discussions influenced the trusted web discussions, which is really focusing on how to communicate or how to transfer data in a reliable and verifiable ways. And I think some of the articles Christopher wrote and presented that as the reading materials is actually really aligned with what we discussed in the trusted web actually. And I think there's a potentially we can learn, and also, of course, we can contribute some of the discussions in this area. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So when did I first hear about self-sovereign identity? I coined the term in 2016 somewhat as a reaction to, a number of years of, user-centric identity and how it just was just not working. I mean, I think like a number of people, I was always a little bit uncomfortable with user. It still felt like that was hierarchical in some ways. And then I did some really interesting readings on sort of the history of sovereignty over the last 1,000 years and realized, well, wait a second, where is the individual's place in this? Otherwise, we risk feudalism. So that's, how I chose the term. Really did try to identify and define it in some kind of concise way and failed over and over again in the spring of 2016. This actually came up in our call yesterday with the EU-US, where there was some desire, oh, well, what we really need is a concise definition. And I'm like going, I've been trying. And the closest that, really was that, initial 10 SSI principles, which I first introduced at the United Nations. And it really kind of took off. I had said, hey, we're going to be, having a rebooting web of trust, let's talk about it more. Let's, improve on them. And that never really happened. That was the baseline. The biggest obstacle I feel like is that there's some depth. I compressed it down to the 10 SSI principles, but I didn't talk about some of the things that I left out. I do have some articles on kind of the origins of self-sovereign identity that talk about that. And so these things keep coming back to haunt me. So somebody will basically say, but, I'm kind of going, yes, we have thought about it. It is rich, complex territory here. And yes, I would like to see you be involved in it. So what is the goal here? So I'm hoping that we can review some of these lens briefs. So all of them right now, I did the first draft on. Many of them I consider to be weak or kind of one-sided. For instance, one of the critiques of self-sovereign identity is that it is too libertarian or too Western or too individual because of the term self in the self-sovereign. And so I tried to capture some of the alternatives there in sort of generative identity and some of these other different ideas about that. But I really don't want to publish those those documents without somebody who really is much more deeply involved with group identity and generative identity and some of these other kinds of aspects of things. And so what I'm seeking is some peer review, um, and up to some level of co-authorship to at least polish these to the next level during the rest of this month and in February. And then from that, identify some key areas where it's worthy of diving deeper. And that would be us working on drafts of papers on specific things that would ultimately help influence what I hope to have on April 26th is a new set of revised principles, or at least a first draft of it for broader discussion, where all the principles have been touched in some fashion based on the last 10 years of learning about them, and that these will influence the next generation of decentralized identity, and that there'll be more papers and articles based on that, depending on the various co-authors and needs that are there over the course of the year, because it is the 10th anniversary. So one of the things that I tried to do, which maybe was a bit overwhelming, was I tried to capture a lot of my own concerns, things that I felt like I didn't quite capture or have been misinterpreted, or those things that looking at over 100 papers so far, and I think there's about 500 on my list. I have this link here, which I will share um, in the chat room. Chat. Here we go. So I'm still working on this, but basically these are some of the most important ones that I've identified, and they all have, a little bit of an abstract, why I think it matters to some of the different lenses, and various kinds of tags. So like if you want to know what's going on in Wyoming, you can click on Wyoming and it'll take you to, other articles having to do with Wyoming. But I've only barely begun this. I think I've got about 100 at this point in this document, and I've got like 500 on my list that still need to be read and grounded in some type of fashion. Oops, that was weird. I don't know why. So the idea behind the lenses was they reveal something the others miss, but none of them are complete. The idea was that we would get, two people, three, to work on at least fleshing them out a little bit. So I feel like it's not just my scholarship that is there. And it's, that it's a little bit broader than that. We won't necessarily publish these lenses unless we feel that they're really good. But again, it'll help us as we have more calls in February to identify, if we only did that bit better, that could make a difference. There are four big categories in the lenses. There's the foundational principles, starting with principle number one of the old reboot of the old self-sovereign identity. What is the nature of the irreducible person? What are some of the flaws in the way that's been interpreted in different places? There's a lot of concern by various people about property paradigms in our discussions causing problems because property can be owned, it can be sold, but identity really can't. So we shouldn't necessarily be using those types of things. There is the issues of the right to transact in the area of digital participation. isn't just like in the real world of just showing up. You have to pay to get there, whether or not it's paying for an internet service or to be able to participate in a platform or whatever. That means the freedom of association, the freedom of speech, or whatever you need to be able to pay for it, and that's been increasingly a challenge. That being said, there's a lot of critiques of a number of self-sovereign identity projects as being too financially oriented or using financial blockchains and having disadvantages from that. So there's, all of these, there's two sides. And the cryptographic paradigms, I personally feel like there's a lot of new things emerging that really will transform what the technical possibilities are. And that could have a profound impact on our different approaches. The second big category is preventing coercion. I've been saying for the last couple of years that maybe focusing on privacy and a right to privacy is, burying the lead. What we're really trying to do is prevent coercion. And there are all kinds of coercion that, systems that compel behaviors. So what is the nature of coercion resistance? What about self-coercion, which can be good and bad? We had a good discussion earlier today, a little bit about how discipline is encouraged in various kinds of systems that allow you to kind of self-coerce to save money or change your behaviors, et cetera. So there's some good sides of self-coercion, or the term literally spoke, earlier yesterday was discipline. I kind of like that, self-discipline, using these tools for self-discipline. But also there are risks where, it is possible through various kinds of mechanisms for the control to feel like it's really your idea when in fact it's, people taking advantage of cognitive bias and other things, which leads to choice architectures. And there's a lot of science about that. What is the nature of binding commitments? People kind of go, well, self-sovereignty means I can walk away at any time. Well, sometimes no. But where is that line? I would say at this point, this has the least amount of people kind of saying, "Hey, I'm rah on these lenses," and it's kind of been kind of curious why, but we'll see how that emerges as we have more people join us. A lot of as I mentioned earlier, there's the whole aspect of identity exists in the context of relationships, both with other people, but also to your context, your work context or your play context or your family context, or to different scales, to your street, your neighborhood, your county, your country, the world. So there's a lot of tough issues here. I think that we'll probably have a lens on one of these, or maybe some combination of these first three. In some fashion, there's at least three people that has said, "Yeah, I'd like to dive into this a little bit more." But not so far, nothing on stewardship. I think there's some real interesting things going on in, for instance, Utah, around what is the nature of caring for those who can't consent, whether or not it's old age or children, and but also, where can that become abuse? So, but I wouldn't say that we have a quorum of people interested in those lenses. Finally, we have these compliance, governance, and technical lenses. And I think that's where the people today are more in alignment, about some intersection of these. So the first one, the principles to compliance, is really more around, how do we make things measurable? If as the Taiwanese government or the Swiss government or some business basically says, we are asking for systems that protect people and all these other different types of properties, and we like the idea of self-sovereign identity. What are the checkboxes that are there? That being said, not everything can be measured, and in fact, there are risks for trying to measure everything. So, there is, as in all of these things, a balance that needs to be done. I am particularly inspired by the CSSPS work, not only from the vantage point of making more of the principles into objective, measurable checkboxes in technology. You can say you can do that, but also I was kind of fascinated by their list in one of their Excel spreadsheets about the things that they left out, that they didn't try to do subjective measures for, because when I looked at them, a lot of them I felt like, oh, those are the things that the regulatory framework should be involved in. So on the regulatory framework side, I think Denkin talked a little bit about this. When are things mandated by governments, by organizations, by voluntary compliance groups, things of that nature, industry associations, etc. But as we've seen in some things, some of these regulatory frameworks, which are intended to be voluntary, have risks of becoming mandatory. So again, there's this two sides. How do we manage things? I feel like there's probably enough people now, even if we aren't able to get the two CSSPS authors involved, to maybe improve these two lenses. The third one here is, more about the sovereignty that is increasingly being claimed by large corporations, especially multinational corporations. It isn't just Google and Apple, it's others. We have some legal traditions historically that says these kinds of powerful organizations have to have accountability for the things that they do, and how do we bring that accountability, demand that accountability from them as they get more and more involved in our lives. So far, I haven't seen any. Nobody's dived into that one except me at this point. So that's kind of the high level. I wanted to, Andre, you've now heard this twice, and I think you were kind of also in this territory. What are kind of your early, your own work in the? I'm sorry, what was the name of the project again?
Cornucopia.
Yeah, Cornucopia. So, where does that fall on the, regulatory versus technical requirements side of things?
This lens is more from a professional perspective that I got interested in. It doesn't really marry against the project.
Oh, okay.
It does allow me to explore more, but it's my own interest in exploring. And the reasoning why is GRC trying to move the career more towards that side and leaving the hands-on coding left behind. That's pretty much the plan. And I did enjoy it. It's easy to follow the paper, the one that I've read. The artifacts themselves tell a bit of a story, and I would have questions for the authors if we got the opportunity to speak to them. But that's pretty much where it stands. Regarding exactly what I'm doing, because it's a new field and it requires a lot of mappings between because it's for threat modeling, the threats themselves towards where people can find more resources to understand or to discuss the event. It will be positioning the project towards the future to encounter and facilitate that. So it's really looking forward or in time. But yeah, it's two things at this stage.
So, you spoke about threat modeling. One of the things that I talked about in the one of the other areas here was the kind of coercion resistance rather than privacy. Trying to pop things up. We want less violence in our society. We want less coercion. We want less um, uh, dark patterns, things of that nature. Do you feel like the threat analysis is it, just focused on, you know, uh, monetary losses and, things being stolen or denial of service, or is there any, urgency to kind of pop it up a level to sort of basically say, wait a second, there are other kinds of systemic harms and threats that, also need to be considered?
I also worry about the power that corporations have, and me sharing my ID, government ID, with social networks, for example, when they only need to know what if I'm above 18 years of age or whatever the age limit is. I think it's abusive and leads to abuse. I got very interested when I started using some requests of information on GDPR, and I wanted to understand all the data that they had, so to try and figure out how it was organized and what could be extrapolated from my activity to find that it's not knowledge that will come with your data, because pretty much you will know exactly all the things that you already have shared, or if you don't share too much, but you'll don't actually understand from a user perspective what that is done with that data, what is learned from you. And looking towards the future, I don't think it's a really good thing. The other bit is that on the context, we tend to be different people, different ways for different people, and depending on the context that we are in. So I was interested in the best way to actually separate that without having to destroy the identity. The example that we had earlier of going and drinking in a bar because you like a group and suddenly there's somebody that, or an event that you don't identify with and you want to move on to a different location. There's a lot in all of the lenses, but the one I explored the most was the one on compliance because of personal interest. So I'm still leaning more towards that one. But yeah, it's just massive. Being able to have knowledge on a particular individual and be able to influence their political views or whatever aspect of life, it will profit someone else, and the level of understanding that individuals have that exactly that happens and how easily it happens, it's also interesting. So if we can empower the individual to protect them from all of those events, it's and how to simplify it so that in simple sentences, the challenge that you mentioned also earlier today of trying to make it into a tweet or whatever nowadays, how do we actually achieve that? And so it's interesting to me. There's a lot of knowledge that I'll have to consume, but it's interesting to me because I find it easier to grab concepts to a certain level of degree, problems, and translate it into simple terms. I think it's one of my strong aspects of my personality, as long as, of course, I can understand it so I can verbalize it. But yeah, starting now, so
Okay.
we'll take it.
Shigea, where have you kind of fallen? Have you had a chance to look over the lenses? Any particular ones feel like don't survive your test and need significant work, or something you want to contribute to?
Yeah, I'm at this moment couldn't read the lenses yet, but I understand that the topic you were trying to cover. And as always, for my way of thinking, that so I want to understand what's the gap between what these lenses discussions and with compared to my current ongoing projects like originator profile or other things. And I always want to start with that kind of gap, not the gap analysis, but the thinking about the gaps between the discussions and where I can start working on. And I'm still not figured out where is which part is particularly interest. But I had a really interesting discussion about the similarity of the some of the discussion you did in membrane. I mean, between the recursive structure of the we use the term community for the group of the identities, and in the trusted web discussions, and I think I'm particularly interested in structure of these boundary and sort of thing. Yeah, yeah, I guess, but I still need to digest. And at least, of course, I need to read these lenses first well enough to understand first, I think. So that
So,
might be I will start, I guess.
have you had a chance to read the progressive trust articles that I've written on kind of building trust in gradients? Is the that's
Oh
my short
yeah,
one.
yeah. I think that I read a while ago, but I'm not with Mons the your progressive trust idea into the what I'm led in recently with regard to when for the attending this session. So yeah, I I'm too busy to think about the multiple thing, and I was almost almost forget about what I read and literally, and the other time I saw that it's really interesting, and some of the discussion with regard to our currently ongoing project with regard to I have two projects with regard to tackling with the misinformation and disinformation. One of the side is trying to tackle with from the origin of the information. The other technique is looking at the contents of the information without relying on other informations. And also, I have some discussion with my apprentice who is graduated, and the discussion he made as a PhD thesis, and so I think there is something in common, and I want to try to digest that into the feeling back to the framework of the trusted web discussion, and also in what you discussed in this, but not it yet materialized, not materialized yet,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, maybe one of your new students might be interested in this particular category. I mean, I found it already to be very I mean, I feel like this is once again, it's kind of like the 10 principles of self-sovereign identity. It needs more eyes. But in my own things, when I start dividing things up into these categories and try to be very deliberate about the words I use. So, for instance, in what I call the assertions declared phase, use the word declare and assertions, and then I accept those assertions, but avoid things like assess and in there, and actually deprecated validate entirely because it's an overloaded term.
Yeah.
And try to have you can verify secrets, but the validity is a different thing. And then at even higher levels, we're basically endorsing and affirming different references and such, and just simply having a language that kind of pulls it apart and says, hey, well, trust is not black and white, trusted or non-trusted. It has these, graduations. definitely, and trying to create at least a consistent language for how I use it has been very helpful in my own architecture design. So the Denkin, so you're, I don't know where you guys are in the Taiwanese digital identity as compared to, say, the Swiss EID work, but it's coming on fast. And, what is the opportunities to influence things, and where are things, kind of already locked in stone?
Yeah, before talking about that, I would like to add a little bit more about what Professor Sukiya has been working on. He's been putting efforts into a system called Originator Profile that's based on W3C's VC. And I think it's super interesting that it's building up tracing the author, the identity from the news organizations there in Japan. And that would resonate me about one of the lens called cryptographic paradigms that compares the VC with PKI systems, what has been constrained by PKI. And so I believe they got questioned a lot about what's the difference between originator profile and C2PA that has been promoted for years. And actually, during this AI generative content era, I know there are several platforms, social platform has been adopted C2PA for the image metadata, and even the government might require them to add that metadata to distinguish what's been made by human and AI. So those kind of identity things has been already implemented in the C2PA, in the PKI system. So that's one thing I'm very curious about. Will they face some limitation based on those PKI assumptions or the challenges we already faced in the web PKI systems, or what else should the whole SSI system improve? Yeah, so that's one thing I'm curious.
Yeah, my biggest concern regarding these types of things is kind of the experience from Hong Kong, um, which is, if everybody's device that is, able to document content and document, different kinds of activities now is, traceable back to the person who has that device and can't be safely elided in some fashion to protect the sources, I think that it can lead to very authoritarian type of practices. So I've talked with them about doing better elision and data minimization practices and having different kinds of proofs that can act as stand-ins for a lot of their transparency goals and things of that nature. That yes, there is a person, an accredited press person behind this, but also very carefully hide the as much as possible the data of who that particular press person was, where they were at a particular time, things of that nature. That's been my concern about the C2PA stuff, especially since a lot of the identification they've kind of punted on and basically said, well, we can't do people identity, but we can do hardware identity. So we're going to get Sony to put it on their in their camera, but cameras are owned by people and in the possession of people. So that scares me a little bit. The But yeah, I think that's an important area. I know I've shared with you, I hope so I did some work for back in September with the Swiss EID to basically say, hey, here is a centralized system. here, you've made some choices, but you're also using some decentralized identity stack items. You're actually using DIDs, you're using verifiable credentials, you're doing SD JOTs, et cetera. And that's where I basically said, well, yes, it's a centralized system. Yes, you're losing a lot of the benefits of self-sovereignty, but there are a lot of regulatory things that you can do that can make a big difference. And in fact, they already are doing a lot of interesting, good things that I haven't seen, for instance, in the European digital ID work. That on the regulatory side of this, to sort of say, hey, it doesn't matter what the technology is, it's how you use the technology. And we're basically going to prohibit these things from happening. And I feel like there needs to be a lot more exploration of that. And as you know, with the emails that you and I and Rolf have been sharing, I'm also kind of concerned that there's some good reasons why I think Switzerland and Taiwan have selected SD JOT. But that's also because you didn't really have an alternative. And how can we make SD JOT better? Either incrementally or at least understand, what its limitations are so that, we can architecture things there. Now that's diving maybe more into, specific technical details. How it fits into the self-sovereign principles is that if we can have governments basically say, these are, some of the, atomic things that, we do believe in that, map to self-sovereignty principles. Thus, we want to support them. That, especially if it's multi-country. Then when I go to IETF, as I did, a year and a half ago, and present, hey, data minimization is a real problem. There are no good standards, no good standard techniques, no good rubrics for what is good data minimization and good data minimization technologies. And their answer was, well, we have no customers, so we'll send it off to, cryptographic research. And I'm basically going, well, wait a second, every country is caring about data minimization in different ways. And there actually is a customer. We're just not articulating it. The customers aren't articulating it effectively. So there is a particular slide here. I'm trying to remember where it is. I think it's this one. Well, that's about platform independence, but that's another side of things. I think, Taiwan, is somewhat unique in the sense that, you have, a manufacturing capability and chip making capability that, makes you, at least in the hardware area, a sovereign. And how much protection and where you want to draw the lines in the sand, should bad things happen to Taiwan, is a difficult discussion. In Switzerland, they have more of a culture of what they call the Reduit strategy. So they're basically trying to be a porcupine, and they've always been. This goes back, hundreds of years of, hey, yes, you can, try to invade Switzerland. You can, try to do these, but we have a culture that basically says we're going to make it very difficult for you if you try. And so it's a little bit easier for me to persuade someone in the Swiss government to basically say, hey, we need to be more careful. We need to deal with unintended surveillance capabilities. We need to deal with platforms that aren't giving users their due process. and I don't know how to do that in Taiwan. I don't know how to express that. And then of course, with all of these digital ID systems, not sure why that flew. There is, they're all the non-governmental parties that are using it. I mean, it's kind of like, I remember there was a law in US that, where Social Security numbers were only supposed to be used by the Social Security Administration. Well, that never was very well enforced. So we're going to see this stuff being used by hotels, by transit, by, all different kinds of business, private sector, and how do we get them to do the right thing as far as data minimization? And I would say that GDPR and the FADP enforcement has not been effective. So what can be effective for these? So, that comes back to, the revisiting anchor of the regulatory side of things. Actually, let me just pull up here. Lenses.
Yeah, before going a little bit deeper onto this, I would like to ask Professor Sugiya, do you have any other things to share about the original profile and versus the C2PA, the PKI system? What I believe you guys have been done some research onto how to differentiate the two, and I have passed it in the revisiting SSI, the cryptography paradigms, focusing on this type of research. Yeah, do you have anything to share about this?
Yeah, in our context, C2PA is currently relying on PKI. And of course, the relying on PKI means, the everything, operational requirement or anything related to PKI need to be bound to the current user of PKI with the C2PA. And the second thing is that we are independent from the original profile is independent from PKI, but it can work alongside with PKI. That's the second thing. And third thing is that C2PA is focusing on the medium, and also they are focusing on workflow within a publishing company, like a newspaper company or whatever. So they are focusing on use inside, mainly inside their internal workflow, but not for the end users. Actually, end user can check the metadata of content included in the C2PA image, C2PA signed attested image files, but whether it is useful or not for the end users, only for the media is questionable. And on the contrary, original profile is focusing on how to deliver the contents to the end user. And also we are focusing on the text on the website. That is the most influential in terms of the disinformation, misinformation. So that is the biggest difference. And if you want to have some more description, then I can send you some of the slides I used in the past discussions. So that is the good short brief with regard to the comparison of the C2P and the OP. And I think I'm currently feeling that it might be possible to discuss OP in the context of the SSI, I think. And OP is actually really flexible. And I think it is possible I want to discuss OP within the context of the SSI in the future. I'm not sure whether I can do that in a short term or not, but that is a clearly interesting topic to discuss, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think, I was just trying to figure out if there is a a lens, because a lot of these lenses cross each other, but I don't think that there is been as a lens around kind of the content identification, content control, in and of itself. I think the closest that comes to it is some of these around the um, uh, the the choice architectures and things of that nature, and the context boundaries, but neither really is precisely about things. I mean, I personally, I ran a fairly popular niche community website for about 20 years. And, I was always frustrated that, we had no ability to control, what was advertised on our site. Google controlled it, and we had no ability to basically say, wait a second, our site is not about buying cars or buying women's apparel that is scantily clad, that is actually secretly trying to draw you into something. And total inability to our choice was either don't monetize or give up all of our ability to do things. So I certainly have sympathy to the media thing. Media being able to choose what they wish to display to their customers. But I think C2PA is going beyond that. I think they're trying to say, a customer can do it. I don't know. Shige, did you make it to the Boston rebooting? I don't recall.
I couldn't. At the time, I was not. Um, I was not realized about the rebooting. I think.
Yeah.
At the Boston.
So it was interesting. So at that particular point, it was called verifiable claims was the name of the draft of the standard. And the early pre-C2PA people, but Adobe and a couple of news organizations basically came by and basically said, hey, we're really excited about this verifiable claims thing because we want to verify claims that something is factual, that something is by an accredited journalist or whatever. And it basically caused a bunch of soul searching during the event where we were basically going, wow, I'm not sure we can actually help these people because these are not actually verifiable claims. These are, verifiers of, who the authors are. And so it's really verifiable credentials. But there had been a lot of resistance politically when the verifiable claims working group was founded, that to use the term credentials at all. And so they were trying to avoid that term. And eventually they were able to persuade the changes to call the standard the verifiable credential standard, which is just simply making statements about the authorship, not the content of what the authors are doing. And that's just been an ongoing tension ever since that. We still see people going, oh, well, it's signed by such and such, that means it must be owned by such and such. Well, no, that's another dimension. That's something entirely different than either authorship or the originator, et cetera. And there's still a lot of confusion in
So
things at that level.
one of the things I want to discuss within the OP's as a part of the original profile project is that we need to determine what kind of intent actually the signer is stating is need to be firstly clearly stated and maybe distinguish the difference on the signing policy, and that may may provide the use of the signing as the part of the signaling mechanism to provide to the receiver of the information. And I think that part is not clear enough in the current um, use of the digital signing, I think, in general, I think. Of course, for example, using within the protocol, some of the protocol, IT protocol, for example, then it is clear that this is signed by reason within the protocol definition, right? So the intention is clear. But if start using the signing key in various context, the intention is not clear. So from the receiver's point of view,
Yep.
so sometimes it is intended as the information is verified by the verified or validated by the signer, but sometimes it's not. So maybe one of the things I need to working on is how to clearly signal such kind of information to the end user.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more that needs to be done here. I mean, so my microcosm for this lately has been cryptocurrency wallets. So we have, many different, we have over 13 Bitcoin wallets who use our technology. We're increasingly having interest from Zcash and Polkadot and a variety of, Tezos and a variety of other wallets are beginning to use some of our specifications. And one of the biggest issues is that it is incredibly important to understand not only what the intent is of the signing, but also to convey in some kind of trusted fashion before something is signed what it actually is that you are signing and what is the nature of is your intent what it really is it accurate? And this is particularly important in all of the sort of Wallet Connect family of tokens and platforms because they use the same key for signing expensive transactions that transfer your assets to someone else as they do for logging into a website. Which I think is ridiculous. But so that means that it's even more important that there is a trusted UI that somebody can rely on that basically says, oh, you're not signing away, secretly signing away your asset to Shigea's retirement fund. All you're doing is saying that you will respect the work that Shigea has done, or some requirement that you have for access to preprints or whatever it might happen to be. And we're just not really good at this, and that's one of the big projects for rebooting this year is to make it work on what is a trusted signing interface that accurately describes what the signer is really intending to do. Now it has nothing to do with content. I don't think we're talking about but signing content for authorship and things of that nature. But it is very similar in the sense that there's this whole challenge of what is the nature of a trusted UI? How do you have segregation of interests? We increasingly work where a single key is insufficient. There's a key that's on a hardware device that is separate from the key on your phone, and it's only when them working together that allows the things to proceed. Is kind of the new paradigm with Frost and some of these other new technologies. And I'm not seeing any of that in C2PA or anything yet. I keep on getting told, oh, well, it's when NIST decides that it's a standard, we'll consider it. And I'm sort of saying, I don't know if they ever will.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good.
So what is low hanging fruit at this point, Denkin? I mean, where you've been to a couple of these meetings. Where what's low hanging fruit that we might be able to tackle? Either a specific self sovereign principle or a particular lens, or as as been saying, you had said something about sort of the commercial side of this. Is it is there how do we get non-governments involved in this stuff?
Yes. So firstly, I would like to share how we are doing here in Taiwan recently. I posted a press release that we have launched our pilot case. And the most important one, I mean, the first pilot for us is used for convenience store package pickup. And it's the only scenario for now. It's important here in Taiwan because for almost 80% of the e-commerce delivery are using the convenience store for pickup. And the number is quite huge. Like in Taiwan, we have around 200 million packages every year. So it's a important life service in Taiwan. And the scenario is really, I think it really resonates a lot about the binding commitments. The scenario has been really restrained and well designed across different stakeholders. For example, we are using the verifiable credential issued by the telecom company, but they did not use the full phone number, but only the last 3 or 5 digits. That's good enough for the package pickup, and along with the full name. And then because that will not harm the existing business of the telecom company, like the SMS or other their identity service. And on the convenience store, they accept that can be done more quickly compared with using the physical cards. Yeah, so I think we designed it one application scenario one by one. So it really resonated about the binding commitments of making people involved in the scenario feel safe from the issuer side, from the verifier side, and also from the user side. The only problem here is that if we are going to building up the scenarios one by one, that is not very scalable from the business point of view, right? But if the government would like to do that and successfully rolling out one by one, that could still work, right? Because for the public government, they, at least from our side, they need to be more conservative in the way that, for example, we during our building process, we really almost touch every single lens topics lightly. And for example, we also have a credential revocation list. And once your credential is being revoked, you cannot use it anymore on the wallet. That doesn't sound very right, actually. But the official wallet will go this way. Because it's a open source system, and I think it will allow third-party wallet along the way. So my point of view is that there is a room for a self-sovereign identity principle-based wallet to be developed and to be showcased to the world. So that's my plans or thinking of this. It's also interesting that because Shigeya has been focusing on the original profile, it's really a real use case already. It's also a very similar to a binding commitment because it's only focusing on the news organizations for now, and there's a browser extension for this. The use case is pretty clear. The problem itself is very clear. So it could be a good starting point to base on those different use cases to discuss whether that's a good starting point to discuss how these kind of digital identity could be developed through different use cases, but also considering other lenses. Yeah, that we just
Also,
talked about.
I know that Digital Bazaar has been doing some interesting things with the National Association of Convenience Stores. And I know,
The true
that,
age stuff, right?
well, it's True Age is part of it, but like one of the
Yeah.
things when I was, very briefly involved in creating, some adversary modeling for them, um, which is a particular unique form of threat modeling that I practice. That it turns out like one of the biggest things that they're concerned about is things like you going from one convenience store picking up your limit on cigarettes and then going to the next convenience store and picking up your limit of cigarettes and filling the back of your truck with cigarettes and then driving across the the state border and selling your cigarettes without paying the taxes and all that type of stuff. So they don't mind if somebody if a single if an individual picks up 3 packs of cigarettes or some booze or whatever. uh, what they're concerned about is that it's done repeatedly in a very small period of time. And so we were, talking about various kinds of zero knowledge proofs where we could basically make it such that, you wouldn't necessarily be revoked when you tried to do the sixth convenience store pickup of cigarettes, but instead that, it would basically say, no, you can't for another day or week, whatever the particular thing was. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know where I feel like there were some other use cases. Obviously, True Age, has been dominating the headlines. All the age-related things seem to be, first and foremost. Part of me wants to, do a adversary analysis on, misuses of age identification systems, but that's, not politically possible at this particular point. But there may be some things if you talk with the Digital Bazaar people that might be able to inform your own convenience stores as to maybe some other pilots that might be useful, and combine your cases. And he may not be aware of this digital delivery thing. I don't think U.S. convenience stores do a lot of digital delivery right now. That being said, I've noticed now Amazon has bought Whole Foods, and now there are delivery boxes, both inside the Whole Food store and outside the food store. And I can have my Christmas gift for my partner delivered there rather than here, and that way she doesn't know that I bought her a Christmas gift. But other people use it other ways, and I think there are other things like Target and other retailers that are looking at this type of thing. So, could be just simply some cross fertilization of use cases around convenience stores and small retailers could be an interesting synergy. Not going to drive the self-sovereign principles forward, but at least it's an interesting connection.
Yeah, I met someone from True Age in the last W3C PAG in Japan, Kobe. I think he'll be interested in into join our discussion about this. If we are going to study from the existing use case to exchange our experience and how we build our system based on those SSI principles for this use case. So, for example, we can learn from each other, from the True Age and from the Taiwan's experience, and our convenience store experience could also be helpful for convenience store in Japan because they also have very strong convenience store infrastructure. And also in Taiwan, we have news organization that could learn from Sukiya's original profile stuff and vice versa. So I think based on those discussion, I mean, starting from describing how we build a system based on what kind of principles and constraints, and then we can communicate with each other what could be missing for those lenses, for those SSI principles, and what could be improved from any of the use cases. That could be a good starting point, and also really low-hanging fruit because we're already deploying those scenarios.
So, changing the subject a little bit, you had said that you guys have begun work on doing SD-JOT, but you're also investigating, for instance, the Ethereum Foundation's wrapper for SD-JOT. Is that because in some of your prototypes or pilots, the batch issuance has been a problem of, and managing lots and lots of certificates? Or what is it that has been driving your adoption of SD-JOT and consideration of things like the Ethereum Foundation's wrapper?
Yeah. So firstly, when we are designing the early privacy technique to be implemented, because privacy is really a strong selling point for our project, even from the minister of the MODA, he learns a lot about selective disclosure and use the word to promote to the citizen like we have this kind of privacy preserving technology, so people will feel safe to join in this wallet project. And then what's the technique behind the scenes? Initially, we also considering the W3CBPS and the SD-JOT. At that time, we are not very full aware of the cryptographers talking in the EU that objects SD-JOT. So in the early stage, we just pick SD-JOT for the easier to understanding and implementing, and it can easily suit our need to be selective disclosure, right? And then as we building up the wallet in the process, we found there's issues of it, and there is some ZK research on this. There are multiple solutions out there. Even Google has included their own Longfellow solution of it. And we met Ethereum Foundation's people that focusing on this project. They would like to build a ZK solution as well. So I work with them. It's actually not an official working partnership between Ethereum Foundation and government. No, it's simply based on the fact that we are an open source project and we have an openly available sandbox environment, so everyone can do some research on it and or fork the open source project to do something on it. And if there's any zero knowledge proof system that can solve the privacy issues along the way, I think the government will really seriously consider it. I know the officials within the MODA are aware of those developments. And so that's one way we push it, like we are using the IETF SD-JOT. However, we are still seeking other solutions along the way. So one way is like just to generate the zero knowledge proof purely from the wallet. So the issuer side or the issuer side wouldn't need to change anything because it's as long as it's deployed from the government side, it's usually very hard to change that as long as unless there's strong reasons, right? So that's the way we are trying to do, and it's still in progress. So I think we can have some discussion or share our experience with the Swiss people about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that can happen. What happened, see, that was IETF data minimization, Shannon, Apple, Klein. So MDL and SDJOT basically are doing what we call hash data elision. The particular technique that they're doing by default is allowing you to leave things out. And thus, that's how like the batch issuance works with in the Swiss wallet. So basically, when you're issued a credential in the Swiss wallet, you're not actually issued a single credential. You're actually issued a bunch of credentials that are all slightly different, but they all share the same signature stuff because the certain amount of data has been elided. So we basically said, hey, if you look at ITF's work, you look at international requirements, you look at things of that nature, that you're not there ought to be better standards and better best practices just for that. This is pre BBS, pre Longfellow, pre the OpenAC type designs. Just like, what is data minimization? And it turns out there are a lot of things that people aren't doing, which they ought to be considering, which is things like inclusion proofs and facilitating herd privacy and other, dealing with encryption and compression, especially when you have like paper credentials or, the putting something on the back of an ID card. And, again, their response was there isn't any customers for this. So we're not willing to, have a, birds of a feather session to try to, figure out what kinds of specifications might be possible. So, when this kind of came up with the Swiss EID, I was really kind of hoping that, we could basically explore these. What is data minimization? What is data? There's also issues of, once you've issued a credential and, it's, one thing that it's in someone's wallet, but like, what are the rules when it's at a verifier? What are the rules and requirements for data minimization when the verifier collects this data, and what can we do about those problems? And I felt like there's a lot we can do there, and then we can also look at the various signature anti-correlation things, Longfellow, BBS, OpenAC, et cetera, and allow us to migrate to those when they're needed, or be able to choose from those as they evolve. Because at this point, I don't know that any of them are very mature. I think the BBS proofs is probably got the most academic attention. Longfellow, yes, it was written by Google, but I don't think that it has a lot of academic review at this point, and neither does OpenAC. So how do we get that? How do we, do that? And then there are other kinds of zero knowledge proofs. So I was really hoping that there could be a series of workshops, initially endorsed by the Taiwanese government and the Swiss government and a few other parties, so that we can sort of begin to capture some of these requirements and what are the issues and challenges and what kinds of specs do we need, and what works now, what doesn't work now. Then I can go back and we can do this session over again and basically say, this does deserve real standardization effort, and not in this case where they basically said, well, you should send it to the cryptographic research group. Um, uh, so anyhow, that's my hope. I don't know, Shigeya, if that resonates with any of the different organizations that you're working with, but that is one of my hopes this year, to see this happen.
Okay.
Okay, well, what I'm going to suggest for now is we'll wrap up on our hour and a half. I'm gonna have another meeting in 2 weeks to see if some of the working circle things have begun to gel a little bit. And if it doesn't look like it is, I'm still willing to do this as kind of a open office hours where people can ask me questions, etc. But maybe Shigea and Denkin, if you can reach out to the two CSSPS people and say, hey, this is real. We do want to work on this. Come present, and we'll be there. And maybe we can get that side of things rolling, because I know there are multiple people that are interested in it. I know, and we ought to be able to move forward some.
Yeah, sure. I'm looking forward to that progress. I mean, both from inviting more people from Asia and also the possibility of Taiwanese government and Swiss government to be focusing on the SDG issues we all faced. Yeah.
Shigea, anything to close our evening today? Afternoon, I should say.
Afternoon, yes. Yeah, I think I have enough motivated to continue working on this. While I have a limited amount of time to working on this, but I think aligning our discussion at the original profile project towards the SSI activities like this, it seems to be interesting, and potentially writing up some of the lens discussions in the context of the OP might be interesting, I think.
Yeah, love to see that. Andre, any closing comments for the evening?
No.
Or morning for you.
Morning's still interesting. A lot of information to go and find more information about, or more knowledge about.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you much. I will send out information it'll be basically the same time in 2 weeks, same signal link, and we'll figure out what the agenda is between now and then.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
See you very soon.
See you soon. Bye.